So besides the dev water cooler, which was really exciting in a lot of ways and maybe disappointing for some people, but I was really excited, MMO Champion and Wowhead have done some data mining, and the new build, patch 1.13, is the new World of Warcraft patch that's been pushed to the servers. So a little bit of data mining resulted in showing that we will be on, apparently, it will be patch 1.13, so, 1.13, whatever you want to call it. And, when WoW Vanilla, when WoW Classic, let's say WoW Vanilla ended, it was 1.12.1. So we will be on a new patch, which is what many of us kind of speculated for a long time anyway. What's important to note about this is that there's some interesting things. So here's the login screen. This is MMO Champion right now, and links will be provided for MMO Champion and Wowhead below. There are some changes in some of the settings here available in the menus. What's more important are some of the tooltips coming back. For example, we see killing civilians will give you dishonorable kills. Killing guards gives no honor. So, to be really clear, if this is all true and accurate, then we will be on a 1.13 patch, and that patch is going to be basically all of the previous patches combined. Now, we don't know yet how that impacts content release. We don't know if this means Classic is going to launch with all of the content available. I'm still really doubtful. I really can't imagine Blizzard is going to launch with all content available from day one. Maybe it's too much to ask to have kind of procedural content, starting off with just Molten Core and Onyxia in terms of endgame, and then over time adding Zul'Gurub, Blackwing Lair, Dire Maul, etc. But it significantly changes the game if they release all the content from day one, and this indicates at the very least the underlying systems are all going to be there from day one, it looks like. I'm expecting that this means we will have the PvP honor system available from day one with patch 1.13. That's my guess and my indication from this. So take a look at this and tell me what you think, but I wanted to share it, and I have a busy morning, so I don't have a lot of time to go into a lot of detail here today, but the big news is we will be on patch 1.13. We apparently will be having honor kills from the get-go. I think we can... These are old game tips that are back, right? So these are just the game tips that pop up on screen when you're loading. I think this is a good indication that... I think that this is going to be here. I can't imagine... Unless they're going to take these out later. They may come back through and say, oh, actually, we're not implementing the honor system yet. We're going to remove these tips for the time being, and we'll re-implement them later. This is just the patch for the demo. A lot's going to change. Assuredly, a lot is going to change. So, don't freak out just yet. But this seems like the first indication that we will be... Classic WoW will launch with all of the underlying sort of structural content of vanilla available from day one. What's left to be seen is whether actual content in terms of dungeons and such are available from day one. So Wowhead also has this same coverage, and they're discussing quite a bit of this. If you didn't catch on, I was just reading this again. So according to Wowhead, they say Classic WoW will run on patch 1.12 Drums of War, in which all classic raids were available, but on modern code. I still don't know if I agree with that interpretation. I'm still not convinced that because the game is running on that patch, that means all the content will be available from day one. Maybe it is. Maybe the writing's on the wall, and I'm kind of sticking my head in the sand and just hoping that the content isn't all there, and it will be progressive release content. But it's starting to feel that maybe there will be... this is Wowhead's interpretation. It seems like that they're implying that all classic raids will be available from day one. The biggest loss from that, to be honest, I don't really care as much if all the content is available. That's one thing. The biggest loss to me is the war effort from Ankarash, presumably no longer being included in the game. That was such a cool event, and it's really a bummer if that isn't available for players, because all the content, including Ankarash, will be available from day one. So I really hope that Wowhead's interpretation here is not accurate. I know it'll be on patch 1.12 or 1.13 now, but I still kind of interpret that as being the architecture, or maybe even the skills and such, and the talent trees, but not the actual raid content. And I recognize the raid content is trivialized in some ways. If Molten Core, for example, you have all of the end game, the 1.12 talent trees, it makes it a little bit easier. But that's a lot different than having all the content available from day one. What's interesting here, and I want to point out, there's a lot of these global strings that were included. They mentioned that this section has not been analyzed extensively and may include miscellaneous phrases from later versions of the game. One key thing is here they mention meeting stones, and I want people to recognize meeting stones were in vanilla WoW. So I feel like this is a contentious point that people can pick on real quick and maybe flip their lids about, but meeting stones were in WoW for a while. Meeting stones are not the same thing as summoning stones. So summoning stones were added in the pre-patch to the Burning Crusade. Those are the stones that actually would, kind of act as a looking for group and pull people in to location. Meeting stones were just a way to group with people, but didn't actually summon you to the location. To be honest, on my server in vanilla, no one used meeting stones. They were totally worthless, and they don't intrude on the kind of classic MMORPG aspects of WoW in terms of looking for people, grouping up, and heading to the instance together, or getting a couple people there to summon people with the Warlock summoning. So don't freak out about meeting stones being a queue or being a string added to the game. That's not a concern. They were there in vanilla WoW. Otherwise, a lot of cool stuff here. I don't see anything yet that totally indicates that any content will be released at launch besides standard content, such as like standard launch content. So that's the biggest hang up for me right now. I'm mostly really curious as to whether or not endgame raids will be available completely or just Molten Core and Onyxia. The reason also why that matters a lot is for some people, like I'm a fairly casual player these days, I won't be able to raid as much as I would really like to because I've got other priorities in life right now. But if I can't raid, but the only content out there is Molten Core and Onyxia, well, I might be a little behind on gear, but I'm only a little behind. Like I can still get some dungeon gear from 5-man dungeons, and that's not wildly worse than Molten Core gear. Whereas if all I can do is 5-man dungeons and people are geared up in Nax, like, a month or two after release, I'm going to get smoked in World PvP, like, pretty harsh. I mean, it's going to be pretty rough. And, dungeon gear does get better as new content was released. There are things that help as sort of catch-up mechanisms, and raids such as Zul'Gurub and A220 are a little bit more accessible for casual players, and that gives you some gear catch-up mechanisms. But there is still a gap between 5-man dungeon gear and Nax gear, much more so than 5-man dungeon gear in early WoW and Molten Core gear. So I do hope that, especially for casual players, that endgame raids aren't totally available just yet. I'm starting to get this kind of feeling that we are going to see all the content available on day one. I'm crossing my fingers that's not the case, but we'll find out soon enough, I guess. Overall, really excited for the demo. There's definitely some negatives. I'm not really talking about the demo today. I just wanted to go over a few of these quick key things that I found the most interesting, and the big ones being meeting stones. Don't freak out. They're not summoning stones. And, of course, the 1.13 patch itself is kind of cool and exciting. So we're going to see what else they changed. I'm more on the sides of #no changes, but I'm still excited to see what they come up with regardless. And call me a sellout, but I'll be playing regardless of what they do, because it's going to be the closest representation to vanilla WoW that I can play with any reliability. So I'll be there day one regardless of what happens. I do hope we as a community can steer Blizzard into kind of a compromise between what they need to do as a business and what we're hoping they will do as fans of vanilla WoW. So anyway, sorry for the short kind of rambly video. Please check out these patch notes yourself and let me know what you think. And that's all for today. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.